Part 2. Deep Dive. Quote, "The more we look into what we think we know, the more hitherto undetected things we shall find lurking in our assumptions." End quote. H.G. Wells, The New World Order. Quote, "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." End quote. Alan Watts. Chapter 11. Forever Forward. Several millennia ago, a man stood on an open plain and gazed afar. To him, the earth and the sky were the entire universe. He understood perfectly well that the earth was flat, because he saw this truth with his own eyes. Any other idea would have seemed absurd. Around 340 BC, a Greek philosopher called Aristotle thought, like those before him, that the sun and moon moved around the earth. This was, after all, exactly what he witnessed these heavenly bodies doing each day. In these endless revolutions, occasionally the earth would stray precisely between the sun and moon. He knew this because the earth's shadow fell upon the moon, in what we now call a lunar eclipse. Curiously, the shadow was always a perfect circle. This, Aristotle reasoned, could only be possible if the earth was a sphere. Had the earth been a flat disk, the shadow would have been elliptical. In the 2nd century AD, the Roman astronomer Claudius Ptolemy, 90 to 168, made further logical inductions about the universe. The earth was indeed spherical, and it was enclosed like a Russian doll by 8 invisible spheres upon which moved the sun, moon, and 5 known planets, all rotating on orbits around the earth. The outermost sphere housed the fixed stars, which were not understood to be anything more than mysterious pinpricks of light. The orbits of the 5 planets, however, were quite complex, not at all like the straight paths of the sun and moon across the sky. At times the planets moved back upon themselves in curious zigzags. It wasn't until 1514 that a Polish priest, Nicolaus Copernicus, 1473 to 1543, proposed a different model of the universe, one that simplified this anomaly beautifully. Up until that point, everyone believed that the earth was the center of the universe, geocentrism. Copernicus proposed that the sun was the true center, heliocentrism. The earth, like the 5 other planets, orbited the sun. This theory was resisted by both the Church, with its belief that man was made in the image of God, and by the scientific orthodoxy of the time. In 1609, the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei, 1564 to 1642, after hearing about a new invention, the telescope, built his own. He began observing the night sky, and became the first man in history to see that a planetary body other than the Earth, Jupiter in this case, had its own moons. It was now conclusively proved that the universe contained bodies which did not revolve around the Earth. And so the Copernican model of the universe gained support, and Ptolemy's model became obsolete, but unfortunately not before Galileo was put under house arrest for the remainder of his life on the charge of heresy. The lesser-known Giordano Bruno, 1548 to 1600, proposed the existence of many worlds similar to Earth. This heresy, among others, cost him his life at the hands of the Church. He was burned at the stake. These heretics paved the way to our modern cosmology of the universe. We went from viewing Earth as God's special object of attention at the center of a smallish cosmos, to seeing our planet as a minuscule dot occupying an insignificant spot on the spiral arm of a random galaxy, just one of some 200 billion galaxies, some of which contain perhaps 200 billion stars. The statement, God created mankind in his own image, Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, starts to sound a little arrogant when you understand that the presence of mankind is less than a speck of dust in a universe that is far grander in scale than we ever previously imagined. Did Copernicus finally uncover the real truth where many before him tried and failed? Not quite. He corrected one vital mistake in our understanding, but still had the erroneous impression of a small cosmos with the sun at its center. The pursuit of knowledge is not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of ever sharper approximation gained over great spans of time. As soon as we think we know something with finality, that knowledge becomes a stepping stone to a wider context of inquiry that we never dreamed of. This often ends up casting new light on our existing assumptions. After Copernicus came Isaac Newton's laws of motion, Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, and notable inventions like the Hubble Space Telescope. Aristotle, Ptolemy, Copernicus, Newton, Einstein, all of them offered something better than what was understood beforehand, but none saw the universe so clearly that his own assertions avoided the ordeal of future modification. How could Ptolemy's Earth-centered cosmology survive indefinitely when he didn't possess the understanding that our planet revolves around the sun? How could Newton's laws speak with finality about the universe when he didn't know about the curvature of space and the elasticity of time? And today, Einstein's relativity feels the pinch of quantum theory. Many people, in their desire to know, seem to need an ideological endpoint, to be able to say, "I'm an atheist," or "I'm a Christian," as if those statements represent the harnessing of an ultimate unchangeable truth. In practice, being an atheist generally means that you look at life through a materialistic lens. The universe is a machine that runs on unconscious clockwork principles, and human consciousness is a largely insignificant product of evolution. These presuppositions could be entirely wrong, but atheists are often unaware that they are making any presuppositions. The assumed position then functions as a restrictor of thought. Similarly, Christianity asserts that God in times past communicated absolute reliable truth to mankind. When that truth inevitably comes into conflict with scientific discovery, it reveals the folly of such a mentality. Human history, taken as a whole, is silently screaming at us that there is no ideological endpoint to discover, by the simple fact that nowhere do we see it. Even if it were possible to find such a thing, how would we know we've grasped it, since the future always tantalizes us with undiscovered knowledge? The harnessing of truth has always been progressive, never absolute, more a matter of fine-tuning our theories over time than of knowing something with total objectivity. It is perfectly sane and even logical for a man to believe that the earth is flat when he is not in possession of any information to indicate otherwise. Likewise, Ptolemy's idea of spheres within spheres was a good theory for its time and lasted for over a millennium. Today, we could be harboring 1,000 false assumptions about reality that we are simply failing to notice because we aren't advanced enough in our thinking. We can never tell how unknown information will affect what we already know. Perhaps the most unexpected can of worms ever to spring open was what happened when we started looking inside the atom. We identified components that we termed protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons, whatever they were, did not behave themselves at all. In the everyday world of objects, we had come to understand that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. But in the quantum world of very small things, a single particle can exist in several places at the same time, or travel from place to place by exploring the entire universe. That's what the mathematics told us, and the mathematics was giving us very accurate results. I personally don't pretend to understand the equations, but I must bow to what has now become firmly established science. The classical model of reality was nice and tidy, but it didn't apply inside the atom. And since the world of form around us was really made of this subatomic strangeness, we had to concede that classical physics was a mere approximation of reality, limited to the context of everyday objects. We needed a new model of reality to account for everything. And so, quantum theory was born. we had opened up a sphere of inquiry so complex and unusual that physicists today are still struggling to get to the bottom of it in the quest for an elusive theory of everything. Sadly, the typical human herd animal will search for a package deal truth, a ready-made belief system that he hopes will transform him from unenlightened to enlightened, filling a perceived void in his life, allowing him to feel that he has found the answer and can now stop searching. But the wheels of progress will keep turning regardless. This forward motion is not usually the work of the masses, but the obscure activity of individuals, often working against the tide of popular opinion, sometimes in the face of ridicule and occasionally at great peril. The two greatest hindrances to progress are 1. Those who say, "It's true because my God said so," and 2. Those who think that what they know will never suffer change. Religious dogmatism and scientism are the chief enemies of progress, for they are both claims that we already possess an absolute truth that will never become outdated. Do you need to identify yourself with an existing ideology? That is fine. Benefit from whatever truth you see within its dogma, but know that you haven't reached the end of your learning or your correction. If you cannot attach yourself to an ideology, even better. By refusing to join, you are undoubtedly closer to the truth, for across the great expanse of history, there is not one ideology that hasn't become outdated. What makes the present batch on offer any different?